You can also dial in from a phone, toll-free, 888-475-4499. And the webinar ID for that is also 792-737-0353. The agenda lists all topics that may be discussed at the meeting and those that are reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes will be taken as a result of the discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. So if we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance for those in person. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Evan Waters is not able to join tonight, so I will be acting as chairman. So first order of business, any announcements? All right, I don't have any either. Any public comment from, what do we usually do, the board first? The board? Or from the public? All right, moving just along. Chair's report. I have no report.
We're on a roll.
Cranking. The next order of business is to finalize some of the reorganization, the liaison assignments. So we did vote on, chair, vice chair, clerk. The capital planning committee remained with Dave Passios, and the building committee went to Tom Gray this year. So that leaves liaison assignments. Did we do any of those last time?
So we did not. We went down the list and I put down some chicken scratch in terms of some potential avenues or areas of interest. So do you want me to go through those? And
Sure.
so last week, the suggestion was there's Mass Association of Finance Committees, which was not on the agenda. That would typically go to the chair, but we can make it somebody else if necessary. The school committee is an item for discussion. I did call Mrs. Archambault this week, and she is here, so we may want to advance that discussion with her this evening. For police and fire and library, I believe Tom Baelish was interested in continuing to cover those. Tom, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. DPW, we had Jay.
Yeah.
COA, we did not have an appointee. Library was Tom Baelish. Parks, we had thought that Chris would be good for that since he is pretty familiar with a member there. For land use, Tom Gray, and for Board of Health, Evan, who also sits on the Board of Health, so that would be convenient. So if we were to go with this, and green communities, which I don't think we also came up with an answer on green communities.
Okay, so is anyone interested in school committee, council on aging, or green committees?
I could do the
Communities?
Green Committee.
You will?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's some overlap there,
Yep, okay.
Dave.
All right, so one of the things we talked about is we're actually going to be a five members on a 7-member board. The school committee chair frequently comes to our meetings. And, if you're willing to just kind of liaise both ways and just kind of, tell us what's going on. I'm not sure we're going to be able to identify someone to sit through both meetings, so. Absolutely, please do.
Hi, Carol Ashambo, 662 Page Street, and School Committee Chair. I thought about what Peter had suggested about going back and forth that way, and I didn't want to do that formally. The more I thought about it, I don't want to make a commitment to always being here, because sometimes I am guilty of watching the meeting on Monday afternoon or something. But what I did thought might make sense was I can send the agenda, which I'm not good at, but I will be better at, send the agenda to the chairperson. And then the chairperson can ask me questions about anything that is on there.
Okay.
And then if I am able to come, I am happy to come and answer that question. Makes sense to ask it via email, though, because that way, if I don't know the answer, I can get the answer. And also, the other thing is, nearly everything we talk about, anything we vote on, the documents are on the school committee website. So there would be opportunity for the finance committee to access those documents. So I don't know if that would be helpful, but I think if we do that, then if there are questions, and of course, if there's something that I think is pertinent, I would send it with the agenda and say, you may want to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
And
And the agendas are posted too, so.
The
it's not-
agendas are posted. Absolutely.
I mean, if I can speak for Evan, I think that that's better than anything we could imagine, and giving a formal role that way probably doesn't make sense, but,
Yeah.
so I would agree with that if everyone else seems to think that's okay.
I think that would probably be the easiest way to take care of
Yep.
this, and I can sympathize with your down to 5 people. And I would also say that we had made a definite attempt to make sure the meetings would be shorter. We will see if that actually happens.
Yeah,
What are you inferring?
Peter tends to do that. So, whatever. All right, thank you. All right, so that would leave an official open on school committee and council of aging at this point.
And, I would say there's at least a possibility that we'll get at least one new member, if not two.
Let's hope so.
And that could be revisited when those members come on.
Yep,
So
okay. So I don't think we
we
typically
don't need to
those.
vote on
Yeah.
any of these. We can just kind of acclamation.
Okay. Sounds good. So I guess so declared. All right, town manager, finance director report. Unless someone here wants to make stuff up, we probably won't have one tonight. All right, discuss fiscal year '23 goals and operating principles, vote to approve. We had it last week, we temporarily, we did a first review of it, and then there were some minor tweaks that Tom Baelish supplied to Peter. So-
Yeah, so Tom sent me these today. I printed them, not realizing that we'd had two members that were remote. So before the meeting, I asked Tom to email Jay. So Jay, hopefully it's in your email at this point.
Yep.
And I'll let Tom speak to the changes, I guess.
Sure, I'm just opening it up here for myself. But essentially, I made some edits on all the committee membership and chairpersons, et cetera. The only other edit that I made was on, I think it's on the bottom of page 2, the bottom paragraph B there. And I just changed the language to say an overview of the budget request, including line item details. I actually wasn't sure, Peter, if some of those line item details, from what I experienced last year, some of those line item details, they don't necessarily flow directly into the town manager's budget, line per line. So that's why change the language that says pertaining to line items, including the town manager's budget recommendation. But I'm open to, if I'm wrong on that one, I could be wrong. But I just wanted to express that and capture the notion that, we wanted to see the detailed line item budget for each one of the different departments.
Yeah, so, and this has been a little bit different from year to year in terms of the detail that we've seen in various presentations from the town manager, but in the most recent budget proposal that she copied to us and presented to the select board first and then to us, there was an attachment that was a line item detailed budget proposal. I want to say it was 6 or 7 pages long. That was not reflected in the warrant, but it was part of the budget presentation. And so when I drafted this, it was that document that I had in mind, that, sort of long-form budget document. But I also think that, this is probably sufficient so long as you get that document from the town manager in February, and then you advise the town manager and the department heads that in the presentations that follow that week, that you're going to go, you're going to want to go through by department with line item detail. I mean, it's almost self-evident, but maybe not entirely self-evident. So I think that that's something that you're going to have to, it's not just a matter of having it in this document. You're going to need to stipulate that come February and make sure that everybody knows what the expectations are.
And I'm sure town manager will get that word out to the department heads as well, so. I think that change is good. I think the document itself is good updates for this year.
And I did write into, like, Tom had crossed out the header date of August 27th, 2021. But there's another reference to 2021 and FY '22 that I've just scratched out. So
Okay.
if we approve this tonight, I'll make a final non-red line version and send it to Evan for distribution.
Great. All right, any other comments or concerns? All
I
right,
move we approve the document.
do you have a second?
Second?
All right, all those in favor, roll call, Tom Baelish,
Aye.
Jay Simeone,
Aye.
Tom Gray,
Aye.
Peter Beardmore,
Aye.
and I for myself. Passes.
Progress.
All right. All right, the next item on the agenda was to discuss ARPA planning. I'll turn it over to maybe Peter, did you have something?
Yeah,
like
so,
that?
and I don't know that, I think this is a discussion, I have no idea what length or detail of discussion is necessary tonight, but this, we haven't talked about ARPA in quite some time, and it came up for a second time in a conversation that I had with the chair of the select board this past week when intending to talk about debt planning. And what he outlined to me is that they have a meeting, I believe the third week of August, the exact date escapes me, that they're planning to discuss fiscal policy. And he also mentioned a discussion about ARPA, an ARPA spending plan in conjunction with that discussion. And he also said that he thought that it was likely that they will bring in the capital planning committee for both discussions. And it seemed to me that we've certainly had some discussions about getting ahead of the ball on debt financing, but we haven't really had a discussion about kind of our thoughts around ARPA. So, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, I think we all know this, but the town has roughly $3 million that came out of the American Recovery Act about 6 or 8 months ago that is fairly unrestricted. We can't spend it on regular budgetary services, and we can't spend it on debt relief, but beyond that, we can pretty much spend it on virtually anything. And so, what do we want to do with this money? And there's some considerations around, come next summer and the years following as the fuse starts to shorten on spending this money. If we're looking to do a sizable public works project, build a park or whatever, it's going to be hard to find people to do the work because literally every municipality in the country has this money. And so the sooner we can make a decision, the sooner we can get the ball rolling and strategically think about aligning resources.
One quick question. The money has to be spent by a certain time or just
Yeah.
assigned, saying we're
Yeah,
gonna
so-
build this park, but
No, it does, it needs to be spent by the
There's
dates.
2 dates though, right?
Yeah,
an
there's
allocated
an
date.
allocated,
2026?
there's an allocated and a spent by date. I believe the
so
spent
it's-
by is the end of '26. But I can't remember what the,
so we got a few years, but still.
yeah. So, so the question, that I think the finance committee ought to be formulating an opinion around is directionally what makes fiscal sense for the town. And so just a couple of thoughts that I've had, and they're just Pete Beardmore's thoughts, is number one, what do we have that we're likely to do at some point that's closest to shovel ready, right? And in my mind, parks comes immediately to mind. There's the beach house on Whalum Lake, and there's the plan that's being formulated for Marshall Park. And, in my mind, we could spend that money, as efficiently as we can under the acquisition laws of the state, and it's money that would be enjoyed by virtually everybody in town. Everybody would have access to it. It's not something that we would say it's a windfall for the police department or the DPW or the schools. This would be money that could be spent for the enjoyment of everybody.
Yeah.
So that's one line of thought. The other line of thought that I have is stretching this out and not having a directional decision around it could begin to complicate debt spending decisions, particularly under like rehabilitation of this building or Ritter, or maybe even get in a future building planning and design planning. So, in my mind, there's a time advantage of keeping these separate and making a decision as soon as possible on ARPA. Anyway, those are my thoughts, but I'm sure there are plenty of others.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. Just, because you mentioned parks. I know Parks is meeting with the select board next week to discuss the Marshall Park master plan. There's also another at McNally Field, the score keepers area in the snack shack. I don't think is usable. That was rotted out and deemed unsafe. So I think there's definitely some care and maintenance of parks that we haven't focused on budgetarily that, could be an area that would be good for it, and kind of in line, I think, with even some of the initial thoughts for where the money should go. But then again, infrastructure-wise, sidewalks and other things are also things that people discuss as being lacking in town. So I agree. I think that plan should be laid out, get it off the table, and then deal with the rest of the big ticket items that are out there.
I'd also add that, a lot of the other areas that we've had discussions about, preservation of historical buildings, school building construction, sidewalks, those are all areas that we have history of success in getting grant funding for. And while there's been a lot of discussion about grant funding for parks, there hasn't necessarily been a lot of success. So, and I don't know why. Like, there could be tons of money out there that we just haven't figured out how to latch onto. But in my mind, we've made good progress, some good progress in other areas, and that's an area that we haven't,
Yeah.
in my view.
I do know the consultants that put together the master plan did have some ideas for additional grant funding there too. So, bringing as much as possible in would obviously be great. So, yeah, no, I agree with the thoughts you're having in this area. Anyone else?
Are the department heads bringing their ideas to the manager who's going to bring it to the select board? Is that how it's going to work?
I would expect so, but I've gotten no additional guidance on this. So just a little bit more context on this, and I can never remember the name of the firm, but the town manager hired a consulting firm to kind of help us navigate this a little bit. And part of the plan with that firm was that there would be also some community outreach and public opinion drawing around this. Truth be told, I was skeptical about spending on going out and gathering public opinion on this because I just think I'd rather spend the money on shovels than surveys. But I don't know where that's at either. So the town manager, I'm sure, will have plenty additional to add onto this. But I think that and by the way, the opinion of the finance committee doesn't have to be the final opinion of the finance committee. We can have a directional opinion right now, and as additional information is brought in, the finance committee can change its mind.
But it's actually select board that has the final determination on that funding, right?
Yep. It's their decision solely in terms of how that money gets spent.
So there's no town meeting thing. It's just they
nothing.
just vote up or they vote for it. Okay.
Yep.
All right, Tom or Jay, any thoughts?
No, I don't have anything to.
My thoughts were around infrastructure as well, like sidewalks, especially within a mile of the schools and the town center. Improving broadband access, and also look at tree trimming for all the roads as the tree canopy is closing in. So we have an issue with storms, taking down wires, blocking the roads.
The only thing I had was on the buildings. We have the building committee looking, municipal building committee. There could be things for this building or for others that, that are probably we already know about that maybe we might want to spend, but we don't know yet if it's worth spending the money. So, but in a couple of years, we probably would.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, there absolutely is money that we could spend here in Ritter. There's no doubt about
Right.
it. The challenge that we have with these two buildings is until there's a programming direction,
Right.
it's going to be very hard to justify $1 million for either building until we, kind of have a program direction.
Right.
So, again, back to that timing confusion that I mentioned earlier, right?
We could get a fan that doesn't click.
That, I think, would probably cost us $3 million. Yeah.
Just to get somebody to give us an
I could
estimate.
just give you earplug.
All right, any last minute thoughts on that? All right. The next one was discuss timing and progress for fiscal policy review.
So somewhat related to the previous item, but less progress made on that topic. So, again, in my conversation with Mr. Jeffries, he outlined to me his thinking in terms of how the select board would likely come at the fiscal policy discussion. He views it as a discussion that the finance committee can be involved in, but also requires input around anticipated capital needs that include both buildings and capital. So I believe his intent is to invite the capital planning committee into that discussion. But what he outlined to me was not something where I didn't come away from that discussion thinking that he expected the select board to make any kind of endorsement or decision in that meeting, but rather to kind of begin a needs and scoping discussion and then come back with some feasibility analysis as a result of those needs discussions. So, what I said to him was, in my discussions with this board, I was probably leaning a little too forward in the saddle from a timing perspective in terms of thinking what we needed to have prepared for that meeting. But he was still in agreement with me that we need that analysis, right? So that strategic capacity analysis is needed. Is it needed, come the third Tuesday in August, or is it needed come the last Tuesday in September? I don't know yet. But nor have we come to any resolution because I was unable to follow up this week with Karen or Heather in terms of, figuring out how we're going to do that work that I think we all think we know what we want, but we don't have a clear path to get there yet.
Yeah, and I think, as it relates to the building design committee's decision, that's where in that timeline does this come into play? Because this is a critical piece to that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It's a chicken and egg discussion, though, right? Like, and how that gets timed out, and it's now sort of a chicken and egg and a rooster discussion if you throw in the select board with the municipal building committee, right? In my view, again, one man's opinion, let's figure out what the spending guardrails are as early in the process as possible. But there are other opinions that are, let's do the needs work first and then figure out how to do the financial engineering and timing to get what we need.
Yeah, I think you got to set the budget, bogeys that you need to live within. I think you got to have a hard look on what's a need and what's a want. And there's definitely a lot of wants versus needs still in that plan. So, then you draw a line somewhere, and that's what makes the cut.
Well, the other way of potentially thinking about this, and I think that Mr. Jeffries has said this several times, is that this is a democratic process. So, ultimately, if you're getting the town to vote to spend money, and this is, primarily excludable debt, right? So this is going to require, whatever we do here is likely to affect a town meeting vote and a ballot vote. So how do you get the votes necessary to facilitate progress? And part of that is, finding that critical mass where enough people consider themselves as benefiting from the decision, right? So, for example, if we were to go and say that we want to build a new elementary school on the TC Pasio's building site with a long-term plan of building a new municipal building or rehabilitating Turkey Hill or what have you, and there isn't the debt capacity to do the second part of that project, then you may not have the critical mass of votes necessary to get you that elementary school, right? So part of the strategic financial planning is analysis in terms of, it's not just need, because need is subject to interpretation, but it's also want, right? Like how do you benefit a critical enough mass of voters to continue to move the ball forward? In case in point, that scenario with the new elementary school, where are the seniors who use the Eagle House going to play pickleball? Where's the teen center kids going to play dodgeball on a rainy day? Where are we going to do the food bank? You know what I mean? So all of those things need to be kind of figured into, all right, maybe all those things need to get solved to address the totality and critical number of votes question. Okay, now is there enough money to do that, right? So it's a complicated calculus to get there.
Yeah, I mean, when we built the high school, you know, the soccer program had to go out of town to run the soccer program for a year or two. I mean, that's just sometimes what you have to do.
I'm not talking about during building, I'm talking after building.
After
Right?
the-
You know, I mean, and I specifically brought up those examples, Chris, because all of the examples that I just brought up are currently running out of TC Passios, in addition to administration of the schools and all that kind of thing, right? So I'm just, what I'm saying here is that it's not just drawing a line on a needs analysis, you know, like we do the capital plan and stacking 1 through 25 and then drawing a line around, you know, across what you can afford. There's a voting calculus that has to be had here that you know is a little bit more complex.
Yep. All right, any other discussion? Tom, Jay?
So Peter, is that should we plan to attend that meeting in August?
I think it would be
Good idea.
I think everyone would be very well served to attend that meeting.
Okay,
You know, and I think that those details will shake out, you know, in terms of exactly how that process will run out and you know, what exactly the role of the finance committee should be in figuring that out. Again, you know, it's important to point out here in terms of not just fiscal guardrails, but who does what. It's the municipal building committee's job to come up with the building plan, but it's the select board's job to set fiscal policy. So, you know, when we're talking about fiscal policy, we're talking about those three numbers, right? The non-excludable debt number, the excludable debt number, and the total debt number, right? I think those numbers are 4, 9, and 11, I seem to recall. So those are
Well,
really the, you know, when we're talking about fiscal policy and managing our debt, that's what's in the policy.
okay. Thank you.
All right, I mean, honestly, nothing gets done in one meeting or in
No.
1 month.
And I can't
So,
imagine that
yeah.
that one will get done in one meeting.
No, and,
We'd be lucky if the expectation is that we're going to do that. That's, ultimately, that would be the best thing, that everybody agrees that that's where we're going to move to get these plans and discuss these things, because these things are going to take some time. I mean, this, you know, it's just, but if everybody has in sight that these boxes have to be checked, then I think hopefully the process will go through. And then part of our job would be is to make, yeah, you said you were going to do that, and as finance committee, if they're not, we can make a comment about it. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Tom, but, you know, I don't think you can minimize, I don't think any of us should minimize the importance of that policy. And, you know, when the select board decides either to change the policy or not change the policy and just, you know, endorse the policy that's in place or whatever, like, that's very unlikely to change inside of the next couple of years, right? The policy that exists today, I believe, was adopted about 5 years ago and hasn't been the topic of any serious consideration by the select board
yeah, it was
since.
even longer than that.
Yeah, and the select board hasn't taken it up since. So, you know, if you look to that recent history going forward, there's a lot of decisions to be made within the guardrails of that policy that we haven't made yet. So it's a very important decision. Because it doesn't necessarily affect the vote on any particular borrowing, but it does affect the way planning will proceed.
All right. So do you think that's the 23rd or the 16th?
Yeah, I apologize. I should have that, and my email got turned over this weekend from town email to school email, and I can't find anything. So it's in my email, and I don't know the specific date. So I will make a point of finding it and sending it to the members of the board. I believe it's the 23rd. Of August, but I have to validate that.
Carol?
I watched your last meeting this afternoon, and I wrote down the 23rd.
I'll take your word for it. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, and I actually blocked it on my calendar from last meeting, and it was the
Okay.
23rd.
All right, good. Yep. Okay.
All right. All right, next one up was discuss planning timing for addressing town meeting amendments to capital plan articles. We've talked about this in the past, perhaps having some means by which to either come up with a town, a warrant article that says that somehow each capital project must be able to withstand its own vote, or something to that effect. So that's the kind of the genesis behind this item. We all, remember the discussions we had during budget season on that, so.
So last week, we resolved that we think that our best avenue on this is a bylaw. And the reasoning on that was that we could get agreement from the select board that they could word the warrant article in a way that would give us what we want. But a new member or two on the select board, and that could change very easily from year to year. So a bylaw is probably the better route on that. I sent an email this week to the town manager requesting town council assistance on this. He had office hours yesterday, I believe, but I was at a conference in Boston and was unable to meet with him. So, and I don't think that it should wait until office hours at the end of August, because ideally we want to get something drafted, discussed, and put in a motion so that it's on the warrant for the November special town meeting. Because to do this right, it really needs to be in a special town meeting sequence, not an annual town meeting sequence. So that request has been made of the town manager, and I don't have anything else to report on that.
Great. So there's kind of maybe three avenues that this could come to be. One is that we just convince the select board that they put it on the article, write a warrant for it. We come up with a warrant request for it, and as a legislative body, I would think that we're allowed to do that. I don't remember the last time it happened. Or it goes in as a, in essence, a town petition. I think one thing would be, just get assurances, do we all still agree that that is the right thing to do as a board? If I recall, I think most of us did, but maybe some have changed their mind.
The only concern I have with voting on individual items is all of a sudden, I like 6 of them, I don't like that one, and I don't like the cops, so I'm going to vote against that. And the only question I had is, back when they did this, which was 5 or 6 years ago, whenever they made the new capital plan, was that part of their decision-making
That was
process?
absolutely part of the logic.
Right. So we haven't seen that, because obviously that's the case. And they built a whole pre-meeting plan where everybody's looking and reviewing and so on. So they're hoping that you don't have that problem where, so, that's the only concern I have, is are we going to go back to where it's like, oh, I don't, teachers don't need new, kitchen tables or something, I don't know, and I don't like that, so people vote against it, and we don't want that, I don't think. You want unity.
So let me take a minute to walk you through the logic on this, because I think you bring up an excellent point, And what you've just highlighted are some sins of the past that kind of led us to the position that we're in right now. The problem is that you can either fix this at town meeting in a very traditional but potentially messy way on the town meeting floor, right? Hopefully, more logical, cooler heads would prevail on town meeting floor and we'd come up with the right decision for the town, I would hope. Or you can do it in the process and tweak the process. Right now, and again, just speaking for myself, we have a mediocre process and a really restrictive voting scenario, right? And what I mean by a mediocre process, and I know that, if Dave Passios were here, he would vehemently disagree with me, but we have what is effectively an advisory committee, right? The Capital Planning Committee, that ranks ranks the capital plan items. We have the town manager that proposes a budget, and she alone brings forth the number that will be appropriated to capital. And she alone has the power to reorganize that list, that priorities list, as she sees fit, right? Now, there's opportunities to recommend for or against on the part of the select board and the finance committee. But from a process perspective, it's literally comes down to, in terms of decision-making power here, it's the town manager and town meeting. Those are the two deciders in this process. So we could tweak the process as well and make that more inclusive or democratic, or call it what you want, right? Give the finance committee a vote or something, right, in that process, or convey more power to the capital planning committee. I don't know what the answer is, but we could tweak that process, or we could tweak the vote and the way the voting is done, right? The path that we've gone down to date is looking at the flexibility that town meeting has to amend an article, right? And in my view, that's the most expeditious way of doing it, but you're right, there's opportunity for it to get messy.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, years past, when these things were shorter lists, but you did have, political factions in town saying we should do this, we shouldn't do that. We also didn't have the current charter where the town manager, we vested all that power in the town manager either, right? So the finance committee literally built the budget in those days, and there were other advisory committees that helped them do that. But that became politicized as well. So you had, both sides were more politicized in those days. I don't think it's our role as the finance committee to say, let's completely redo the whole process, right? I think as the finance committee, our job is to advise town meeting. What I took away from last year's process was that the town meeting did not have the tools to be able to affect what might have been our recommendations had they had them.
Who gives, was it approved by the town meeting, the capital, where the capital budget would be prepared, or was it the selectmen voted on it and that's how it got approved? How did?
The way the current process worked is stipulated in the charter.
Okay.
So the only way to really change that process is to redo the charter. Which we have an opportunity to do it by the charter every 10 years, or we could reopen it anytime we want, but it's a pretty big exercise.
So
right?
when the charter was being debated the last time, there was a lot of concern in town that we were putting way too much power into only a few individuals. And we were assured that that wouldn't happen. But I think that this is a case where there is just too much power, in one individual's ability for what is now, multiple millions of dollars worth of, capital projects. And if we remember back to this year's annual town meeting, I think the School Street project, it was a good example of where the town wanted to demolish the building, clear, and it was split, and not split enough as to whether they wanted to allocate the amount of funding that was there for the park. So I personally think, and I've looked at how other towns do it, I personally think the town voting, the town meeting should have the ability to remove capital plan items explicitly. I think that is the intent of, town meeting and town governance. So that's my personal opinion.
One additional bit of context here is that, I explained my position, but I didn't get any details on any of the items that I had issues with, because we had debated them to death here, and it was to no end at town meeting, so I didn't do that. But just the case that I tried to make, and then some other people got up and basically spoke to support that case around the rights of town meeting as I see them. There were roughly 160 voters in the room for the capital plan, and 40 of them, roughly, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was basically a quarter voted against the capital plan, which is a fairly large number when you think that we didn't really debate the merits of any items on the capital plan. So, there is a not insignificant, contingent of voters that believe that we should be doing this differently.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the alternative being that you shut down the entire capital plan because you don't like the one capital item for a, bronze statue of Peter in a swimming pool. Although I kind of think a swimming pool might be nice.
A fountain, I think a fountain would be better.
You shut down everything, and then, you're 6 months, I think a harder vote at the next meeting to recover.
So in any event, I've made the request, and I think that once we have some kind of draft, I think that the Finance Committee can make a determination in terms of how we proceed with it.
Okay. So you intend to meet with town council? Do you intend to bring anyone with you, or is it?
So right now, it's a written request.
Yeah.
I basically said what I think we need, which is, I put it really simply, which was, in fact, I'll read it because it's a public document. Hi, Heather. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I'd like to request help from Town Council with putting together a proposed bylaw change that would ensure town meeting voters can amend the capital plan by individual items and monetary appropriation. And then, the basic background, that's the path that we had requested, and can you help us? So, the challenge with the bylaw and the reason why you want to bring in town council early is because if we amateurs attempt this, there's plenty of opportunity to mess it up. So my preference is bring him in early. He'll figure out what section to put it in and how to word it in a way that will not raise crazy questions at town meeting. Not crazy, but questions that we wouldn't have, that we may not properly vet if done on our own.
Okay, so, there's good discussion tonight on this. Maybe this should be added to the next agenda too, and if people want to think about what was said and, have additional comments, we could do that, so I'll
But
ask
suffice to say, we're all in belief that, number one, we want to pursue this, and number two, it should be done for special town meeting, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I know I am. I don't know if we want to do a straw. Does anyone object, I guess, Oh, Tom Baelish with his hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree. I think the path we're on, and thank you so much, Peter, for pursuing that. I think that's the right path.
Yep.
I'm definitely, I think, with some others, leaning towards an amendment to the bylaws, but, like everybody else, I'd like to see the wording and think about a little bit more the implications, but I think it's I think it's the right path, and I'm supportive.
Okay, any other discussion?
I don't know if it's a path. I don't know if it's it's not the only path, but I think we should look at it for sure.
Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda was minutes. I don't know if we had any.
Yeah.
There was one set that was,
Yeah, last meeting's
Added.
July 21st.
Right.
Did everyone get a chance to read them?
Yes,
I did.
You did, okay.
Yes, I did.
I did.
And entertain a motion to,
I move to approve the minutes for July 21st.
all right,
Second.
all right, roll call vote, Tom Bailish,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Tom Gray,
Aye.
Peter Beardenmore.
Aye.
And I'll abstain, I didn't read them. All right, committee reports. One committee report I got was from Dave Passios. I'll just read what he kind of said. The Capital Planning Committee will meet via Zoom next Wednesday, August 3rd at 7 PM. I think that's their first meeting. They'll decide on a regular meeting night and time. It will be determined as to which method of recording meetings will be used going forward. And then we had talked about this last week. He said he would update either in person or through Evan and/or myself as chair, as a means by which to get feedback from that committee on a regular basis. And then, like I said, Parks is meeting next Tuesday with the select board. They're gonna go over the highlights of the Marshall Park plan. I don't think there was anything else that I've heard on Parks. Any other committee reports?
I don't have one.
On municipal buildings, I got sworn in, and I was told that there's a meeting on the 1st, I think, of August, and, but I'm waiting for the agenda, but I'll be there.
Great. Okay. Any public comment from, what do we usually do, the board first? Board?
No.
From the public? All right. Any items for future meetings?
So the only other thing that we agreed to last week, in addition to carrying over the items from tonight, is I think we said we would talk about new member orientation again on August 18th. Is that your recollection, Tom Bailish?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And other than that, it's stuff we've already got on this agenda that was just going to carry forward.
Any more interest, Peter, from anybody?
Say again, Tom?
Any more interest on membership from anybody?
I think there's been a couple of conversations, but I don't think any official interest has been expressed yet.
Okay.
All right, so upcoming meetings are August 18th and August 25th. And with that, and prior to 8 o'clock, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right, roll call vote, Tom Bailish,
All right.
Jay,
Aye.
Tom Gray,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and I for myself, adjourned.
The new chair.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.